Welcome to the Abundant Accountant Podcast. This is where accounting professionals come to learn the most efficient and powerful ways to grow their accounting firms, sharpen their sales skills, and really have a path to creating consistent increased revenue. I cover topics from networking, pricing, ideal clients, how to handle objections, how to handle you're too expensive, and how to set boundaries with clients so you can stop giving away your time and expertise away for free and really start getting paid your value and your worth. You'll learn tips and strategies and also hear personal interviews from successful accounting professionals and others in the industry. This podcast will show you exactly how to create the firm and life of your dreams full of abundance. Welcome to the Abundant Accountant Podcast. Today we have a very special guest. Our special guest is a mom of three. She's a CPA on a mission to mentor bookkeepers and accountants so they can leave the stress of working their 9-to-5 behind. Our special guest is Serena Shoup, and she provides her students with the necessary resources and tools to run their own successful bookkeeping practice so they no longer have to miss out on that precious time with the family, the kiddos, and can live their life on their terms and not on anyone else's. But before we welcome Serena to the show, it is absolutely crazy that so many accountants think that increasing your fees will lose you clients and result in lower revenue, which we're going to talk about today with Serena. And sure, you could discount fees, get as many clients as possible, send out a proposal and another one, and then want to increase your firm revenue by working harder, but slowly realize that that's a lot of work and a big struggle. But the simple fact is that the clients that I work with triple their base fees, get paid first and upfront, without ever having to chase down clients for a payment or having accounts receivable ever. Poof, it's gone. If you want to see how other accountants, EAs, CPAs, tax resolution experts, bookkeepers, tax planners are doing this, then register now for my brand new masterclass at theabundantaccountant.com/masterclass. It's an investment of 48 minutes, maybe 48 and a half, that will provide you a lifetime of increased revenue without working more hours, without having to get any more designations or qualifications. So once again, theabundantaccountant.com/masterclass, and I look forward to seeing you there. Now let's welcome Serena to the show. Welcome, Serena, to the show.
Oh, thank you, Michelle. It's always a pleasure. I'm glad to be back. Thanks for inviting me.
I'm very happy to have you back here at the Abundant Accountant Podcast. You exude abundance in all areas of your life with your personal life and your kiddos, your family, and how you have fun still. And I think that's what everyone here strives for. Before we dive into our amazing episode today, make sure to grab a pen and paper. But Serena, can you share with everyone real quick who you are, just in case they haven't heard you yet?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Serena Shoup. I am a CPA, although I run a bookkeeping business from my home most of the time. I also have a tiny little office in town to get some quiet time, but I also have 3 kids at home. I run my virtual bookkeeping business, as well as mentor other bookkeepers and accountants who are looking to start their own business or kind of in the more beginning stages of their business. Yeah. Maybe in that transition from side hustle to taking it full time.
Yeah. And I think that's really a good segue into what we're talking about today, like why setting yourself apart from other bookkeepers or other accounting firms or other tax planners or other tax resolution experts is crucial for coming across that objection that you might hear from a client. Like, how are you different than, XYZ bookkeeping firm? Or how are you different from XYZ planning firm? Or how are you different from the CPA firm I currently use today? And, I think our conversation today will be really important for each of you listening, because none of us here want to be seen as a commodity. I think I've heard that a million times, Why does everyone just call me Michelle and ask me what do I charge? It's like, well, that's how you've trained us. So Serena's going to share, 4 different ways to really set yourself apart eliminate that objection in the future. Because if we do a great job on the front end, we eliminate objections in the future, at the end when a prospect might ask you that. So very happy to have you here. And yeah, let's dive in, because I know that in the beginning, how long have you had your firm?
About 4.5, 5 years-ish. Yeah.
Okay. So if you go back to 4 years ago, or maybe 3.5 years ago before you started, what was it like for you when, you had a new prospect come in and you were like, all right, I'm going to talk to them and see how this goes?
Yeah. Well, since I came from corporate, I obviously didn't, I came from a corporate accounting department. I didn't have sales skills, right? We don't learn sales in our accounting degree program, unfortunately, because they're not expecting us to graduate college and then go into necessarily entrepreneurship or working in a sales role because you have an accounting degree. So what they're expecting you to do is be able to interview for a job and go work for a company or a Big Four or whatever, the general path is for your degree program. So when I went out on my own, I had all that corporate experience. I was really good at interviewing. I was really good at getting accounting jobs. And so I was like, well, my sales or discovery calls are basically just an interview, right?
Right.
You're probably cringing over there. So I learned trial and error that when I showed up to my calls as like I would for an interview, well, I then became treated more like an employee and like that commodity, right? So I started teaching myself about sales. Unfortunately, I hadn't found you. So
right.
I learned all that I could on my own, reading some books and watching webinars and things like that. And then I just started slowly testing things out and changing the way I showed up to those meetings. And I also discovered, like, it's funny because there's definitely things that you can do once you're in an engagement to set yourself apart, but you have to be able to prove
get
a little
that
of
engagement.
That.
You need to get the engagement first before you can do the engagement.
Right.
Set yourself apart.
So that's where I really focused my attention in being able to showcase my talents and my strengths in that discovery call and build trust, right?
Yep.
So that they would expect a good experience. And then you have to follow through with that, of course.
Right. So
on the back end.
Well, that's the execution of the work. But first, we're just trying to get past the, you meet with them and then the client says to you, well, it was really nice to meet you, Serena, but like, really, how are you any different than the other accounting CPA firm I'm with? Or how are you any different than them? So what's like the number one thing for someone listening that really worked for you, since you did everything kind of, haphazard before, trial and error? It didn't really work. Before we dive into the four things, how much money or did you maybe lose out on because you were just, doing this trial error thing and didn't have this part solidified? Did you lose out on any revenue opportunities?
Oh, surely I did, because with that, I was also, all of this is intertwined. I was underpricing myself because I didn't realize what I was actually bringing to my clients, and I couldn't really communicate it that well. So that's all part of like building your value and setting yourself apart. Really starts in that discovery call. But the other effect of that is I was landing engagements, but I was vastly underpricing myself because I didn't realize that what I was giving them was such huge value. So it was kind of like this vicious circle.
Right.
Probably thousands and thousands of dollars, if we're honest.
Well, I think it's important that we're honest. So everyone here is like, oh, okay, I'm, all right, I'm in the right place. I've been justifying my fees. I've been undercharging. I show up to the client meeting. I'm like, thinking in my head, I'm going to charge them $500 a month for bookkeeping. And then all of a sudden it goes down to $100 just so you can get the client. And then you wonder why you feel burnt out later on, right? Because we were underpaid for that work and you're putting in all this effort and you're just starting out and you want to get referrals, you want to get other clients, but then it's like the vicious cycle. So what's the first thing that you changed
I would say the first thing that I changed was I stopped trying to prove myself in those I say interviews because I was totally treating them like job interviews.
Yeah.
You're trying to prove yourself in a job interview. Although now what I know about sales, I would also approach my job interviews completely different. But let's go with how I was trained before in interviewing. I would stop treating it like trying to prove all my skills and my value in that respect, and I would flip it over and start just asking the client really good questions. So I would say that's number one, is ask good questions in your discovery calls and be really interested in what they have to say.
And I have another question. So, uh, and this is kind of a joke all at the same time, but when you showed up to your client meetings and you're like, oh, I'm going to come with really good questions, did you just think of them on the spot?
Heck no.
Oh, okay, okay. So you prepare in advance.
Yes.
Oh,
Preparation
okay.
is definitely key. And for some of us, like, you're also sometimes you can over prepare and just get yourself really worked up. So there's a balance, right? But to not only prepare, but practice when you're not in preparation mode too. So I would practice asking certain questions, just like to myself on a Loom video or in the mirror. It sounds really funny, but you kind of like, you're going to be in an uncomfortable situation anyway. So you may as well get uncomfortable when you're
Uncomfortable.
by yourself.
Exactly. Or ask your kids. You could practice all the questions that you come up with on your kids. How long do you spend preparing for a meeting?
Now I don't spend very long at all, maybe 15 or 20 minutes, but that is the product of me having lots of discovery calls already and practicing on my own. I also, like, this is totally like a side tangent, but I also took, like, I worked with a speaking coach,
Oh,
and that helped my communicate. I mean, I still work with her. Like, it just helps my communication all together with family, with friends, with clients. So that's kind of like a side. If you really are serious about up leveling yourself, there's always something like that. There's coaches for everything, literally.
there is. And I always say you can pay a coach to help you get there a lot quicker, or you can just fiddle around and figure it out on your own. And then, like you missed out on thousands of dollars of opportunities. But, there's books, there's podcasts, there's me, there's Serena. If you're opening up a bookkeeping firm and want to do it the right way, she's already messed up everything for you. She's already put in thousands of dollars in mistakes to make sure that you don't make the same mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. There's
Okay.
always going to be a little bit of like, you have to kind of go through things on your own and figure them out, but you don't have to do that with everything.
Yeah. And in the beginning, with when you were preparing for your meetings, how much time did you spend? I know you're down to 15 to 20 minutes, but for those
Yeah, I
that
probably
might be just kind of starting out, what do you say?
I would say if you do the homework before you start having a bunch of meetings, you can cut down that time. And if you kind of group things together, like if you say, okay, I'm going to practice for a couple hours every week on like the questions that I want to ask. And part of practicing too is just like writing things out and writing your own scripts so they're in your
Mm-hmm.
language, but then also actually saying them out loud, because most of us don't write the same way that we speak.
True.
um, so if you put in that homework and practice outside of just preparing for discovery calls, then you can reduce the time that you're preparing before each meeting. But I would say at the beginning would probably prepare for like between 45 minutes and an hour, um, looking at their website, looking at things about their industry. And of course, the more you niche down, the less of that research you have to do on each client, because you already know the industry, you already know the type of client you're working with. It's more about just kind of getting to know them specifically. Um, so there's all sorts of things that play into this, like
There
that
are.
that benefit it, right?
Yeah.
Um,
And I think, like you said, the more practice and the more repetition goes into one of your other points that you just mentioned, like systemizing it, having a process around your meetings. And this really sets yourself apart from other bookkeepers or CPA firms or accounting firms or EA firms, because I know some of the EAs don't like, they can't call themselves an accountant. Um, and I think that's one of the biggest things to not only set yourself apart from somebody else, but how to overcome that objection if you even hear it at that point, because that is something that will differentiate you from the other firms, from the other experts that are out there. So share with us a little bit more on the systemization of the meeting.
Yeah. So I for discovery calls, I definitely have like a flow and an agenda, but I also do the same thing for my monthly meetings. So once you land a client, that's one of the 4 ways that I set myself apart from other bookkeepers is that my team and we do meet with our clients every month, and that's just included in every single package. Like, it's non-negotiable. They can either use the meeting or not. They can schedule it or not, but it's in our pricing and it's there for them. And so that's what I tell them too on the discovery call. Like, if someone were to ask me what sets me apart, that would be the number one thing. And they're usually like, wow, my last bookkeeper just told me that QuickBooks was ready for me to look at. Or maybe if they were lucky, they would get emailed their reports. But wow. a lot of bookkeepers I have found are just going in there, doing the work, and then sending a message that says, okay, your books are done. Which is like mind-boggling to me. And to actually hear that from a client was what really got me thinking about, oh, I need to actually showcase this on my calls when I'm meeting with a potential client.
Yeah. And I think that's really crucial to setting yourself apart, having that exact experience that they've never had before. I think that's the other crazy thing is that so many firms, or I don't know, I mean, you help new firm owners and you've worked with others that want to fix their process. What have you seen, Serena, as far as people that have this front end process solidified and figured out?
Well, most of the students that I work with they are so much more confident once they are like lining up meetings and getting leads. They're like, I'm really confident that I know what I should be talking about on these discovery calls and my monthly meetings, right? I know that like I do have the knowledge to serve them. And so they go into the discovery calls with more of an abundance mindset, because that's what we talk about too. It's like, part of it is tactics, but part of it is just your intent as you go into those meetings and your energy. So I know I'm getting a little woo-woo, but
it's so important. You could do all the tactical stuff. You could prepare. You could do this for 45 minutes. But if you're still like, oh, they're never going to pay me the $500 a month or $1,000 a month, or they're never going to do this, and you have those thoughts, and the intention isn't, you know what? I get to help a client that's had probably a really horrible experience over the last 10 years and never had consistent monthly meetings with their bookkeeper, or whatever it is that you've heard most of your clients complain about to you when you first meet them. That's what the opportunity is.
Yeah. And that also, to piggyback on that, is like, you go into those meetings with a mindset of serving and not like really worrying about whether you get the client or not. You're most likely going to get the client because people pick up on that kind of energy. Like when you're really anxious around a dog or something, they pick up on that energy, and people are just the same. They'll pick up on your energy of desperation, and they will feel like it's a sales call. And all of the clients that I've worked with have said, like, I didn't feel like a sales call at all. I didn't feel like you were pitching me. And that's also very different from the other discovery calls I've had with different bookkeepers. Like, I always felt like I was being sold to, and I'm like, nope, it's just an invite. Like, you can take it or leave it. I would love to help you. But...
Yeah. So before you changed the mindset and went with this approach, when was one time where you completely blew it, where you're like, oh, I need the client, right? Because I'm sure we've all had those moments that you could share with someone listening, because they might be in that stage right now where they have payroll, they have 3 kids they have to feed, They have,
Mm-hmm.
An office, and they have their personal expenses, so they need to take the distribution or get paid. Share with us that client story or the moment where you're like, that will never happen again.
Yeah. And honestly, I still ended up getting the client, but it was,
And give us the name. You can make it up, like Bob, Joe, Susie, whatever.
Joe, sure. We'll go with Joe Schmo. But yeah, so I went into the meeting, and this was actually the first time I had tried to more sell a like advisory type package. And so naturally, like I got all of it wrong. I mean, I did a few things right because I did still land the client, but I like allowed my fee to be negotiated down. And I like ignored red flags because I was like, well, I just really want this advisory engagement so I can like really hammer out this process and take this to future clients type of situation. And if this engagement goes well, it'll be a great case study and all that kind of stuff. And then like the money, when it comes, it'll be a lot. Right. So it was not an ideal client to be working with. And just when you go into that desperation mode, it ends up being more of a drain on you than like it would have been easier to pick up 4 other clients to equal that monthly fee and still less of a like mental drain on me.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
And it was exhausting, I bet, and taxing, mentally, yes, emotionally, physically. It's like those ones suck the life and energy out of you. Well, I know you've had the firm 4.5 years now. So when was Joe Schmo? When was that client meeting?
That was
what year were you in?
It was before the pandemic. So it would have been 2019, like towards the middle of 2019 , maybe.
Got it.
So, and I ended up letting that client go
after all,
2020.
It still went, right? You let him go after all of that. So yes. At the end, isn't that interesting how it comes full circle? It's like you knew in the moment that you probably shouldn't be doing any of the stuff you were doing, and you really wanted this advisory client, and you really wanted to figure it all out with this client. But then when it came down to it, he still didn't work out. And then you still let him go.
What also happened with that is that it damaged my confidence on being able to deliver advisory packages. Because it didn't work with that client, and I was just like really kind of let down and was like, should I even be doing that? Maybe I'll just go back to straight bookkeeping.
Right. Yeah. You're like, maybe I'm not cut out for this. So just to quantify, you had him from 2019 to 2020. So let's just say 12 months. How much did you end up, discounting or donating your fee? Like, what was that monthly amount?
So here's where like it gets ridiculous, and maybe someone else has gone through this and is like, yeah, I made the same mistake, or hopefully you can avoid this mistake. But they were in a startup phase, and so even though I had told them what like my minimum advisory fee is, they ended up, kind of coaxing me into, well, since we don't have revenue yet, let's do like a different structure. And once we get all this lined out, like I created their forecasts for them, their budgets to help them like figure out where the company was going to go. Well, when I do those budgets, I was like, well, if they actually make this money and I get a percentage of their revenue, then I will make up for all that free work I did in the beginning.
And it would have worked out.
In the end, I probably made $2,000.
Wow.
But it would have been $24,000 if they had hit their goals when they said that they were going to.
Which
granted, the pandemic happened, right, and that kind of put a damper on things. But with that, and just like it wasn't a great client personality fit wise, I was like, I'm just going to cut my losses.
So do you think the total loss then was $22,000? Like if they were to have paid you what you wanted up front, no coaxing into any crazy percent of sales situation, you would have generated $24,000 on this client. You got $2,000, so you were in the negative $22,000.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Wow. Yeah.
That's like a part-time salary.
Yeah, it is. Wow. That's
And
crazy.
it was a lot of hours and it was just really draining. I mean, I learned a lot from the experience for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Wow. All right. Well, thank you for sharing that. I'm sure those opened up some little wounds that you're like, oh God, I didn't know I was going to talk about that, Michelle. But I think it's important, right? Like that was a $22,000 lesson. That's a very expensive lesson. So see, Serena's already been through the lessons for you all. All right. What's your third thing that you need, that a bookkeeper or accounting firm owner or EA firm owner, tax resolution expert firm owner, whatever your specialty is, just insert it there, should do to really set themselves apart to eliminate the objection of how are you different than other accounting firms, or how are you different than my current CPA? What would be the third thing?
I would say have a way or a method that you take clients through. And this one was hard for me to kind of establish something because we're so close to the things that we do. We think it's just like second nature and there isn't actually a way to break it into like a method, right? I'm sure your program has a method that you take people through.
Oh,
like
yeah.
a 4-step whatever method, right? So it's the same thing.
It's a lot more than 4, Serena.
Right, but just to
I
keep
get the
things
gist,
simple,
yeah.
but like a framework, in other words. There's all sorts of different names for it, but to have a framework that you take your clients through, and it takes some time to work that out, and like sit with it and think about what you're going to call the different steps and all that kind of stuff. There's books that will help you create frameworks. I can't remember the one off the top of my head. But you could probably Google it and say like how to establish a framework and just start really thinking about the process that you take your clients through, because you do take them through some type of process. And even if it's as simple as like showing them like, this is how we work together. When we sign you on, we take you through an onboarding process, and this is what happens in onboarding. And then we start to get you into a monthly rhythm. And then this is what you can expect with that, like your monthly meetings, hint, hint, start doing monthly meetings and things like that, right? So it can be pretty broad and basic, or it can be a little more like detailed. That's really up to you, but to have established a process that you take your clients through to get them results.
So do you show up to the meeting with the process in place, or do you just figure it out as you go?
It's in place. And it's something that we do with
you got to prepare,
client,
right?
Yeah. So again, you have to, that's why I'm saying like read a book, think about what you want your process to look like. And this is going to make your client experience a lot better too, because they know what to expect every step of the way. And there's so many different ways that you can present this to clients. You can have it as a video on your website. You can just talk them through it on your sales calls or your discovery calls. And then you can continue to like show them where they are at in the process as you're moving them through like your onboarding or whatever.
It doesn't have to be, it could either be really broad or, basic, or it could be really detailed and everything else. I just think you have to think about, and I'm sure you're very consistent, Serena. And I would say consistency in your client experience is key, because that's how you will start to be known. And this is how you will be able to also solidify the differentiating factors between you and other firm owners. And people recognize it. People understand the experience. So, yeah, I love that. And what's your fourth thing?
So we talked about asking good questions, meeting monthly, and having a process. And I mean, I kind of spoke about this in the asking good questions, but this is like a continual thing, is communicating often and showing interest in the client as a person personally and in their industry and their company. So that's one thing that I was not doing at the beginning, and I got called out by one of my clients.
What happened? What'd they say to
you? They had hit like a goal, and they were like super excited, and they were like, "We hit this goal," and I was just like, "Oh, cool," because I have like a poker face. Like I am not as And I've been told this too. People are like, I can't read you. Like, you just always have a poker face. But inside, I was excited for them, but I wasn't like expressing it. And so now I make it a point, like it is on my monthly meeting checklist to celebrate something with the client, however small it is. Like some of us have to be reminded. So I have a part on my monthly meeting checklist to celebrate everything you can.
That's awesome. I love it. Well, celebrating is really important, I think. And it goes for me too. I was on this trip in Spain. It was a couple years ago with a business girlfriend of mine. And, I was getting new clients and doing all this stuff. And she's like, you just go about your day like that wasn't a big deal. That's a really big deal. Let's go do this, or let's go shopping, or do you ever buy yourself anything? And I think celebrating is a crucial part, but it will also set you apart from all the other firm owners, because no one's doing that with their clients. My CPA never says anything like, wow, good job, Michelle. You did a lot better than last year, That's a big deal. Yeah.
Well, every meeting we have with them, they're monthly meetings, right? If we have like a random meeting in the middle of the month for something, it's probably like a very focused reason. But for their monthly meetings, part of prepping for that monthly meeting is looking at their financials and finding something that we can celebrate, whether it was their profit margin was up 2 percentage points this month over last, or it was up 20% from last year at the same time. Whatever we can find. If they're reducing their credit card debt, we will celebrate them. Even if it's like only by $500, or they spent less on their credit card than they paid down on it, right?
Yeah.
Because some of our clients, do that. Yeah. They're floating their cash.
Right.
So every month we make it a point to open the meeting with a celebration, and then asking them like if there's anything on their mind that they need to get out immediately and cover, right?
And what do you do? Do you do anything special in your celebrations, or is it more of like an acknowledgement, bringing it up and congratulating them? Or
it's more of just an acknowledgement and the congratulations. If it was something big, we might send them like a little gift or something, a little bottle of champagne. But generally, it's just an acknowledgement. Nice. in the meeting. And honestly, like some people, our words of their love language is words of affirmation. So those type of clients really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And
they never hear it, especially from the numbers people, which is all you, their most trusted advisor.
Yeah.
Like you're that cheerleader on the sidelines saying, yeah, keep going. You see their bank accounts, you see the credit cards, you see their taxes, you see their financials. Like that's a big deal.
Yeah. And the other part of that too is celebrating things that they are doing right. Like, even if it's not financial related, of like, we can tell that your podcast is doing really well. Like we'll follow them online. We'll listen to their podcast if they have one. We subscribe to their email newsletters. We get into their world, so we know what's going on with them, and we can celebrate other things that we notice. Like one of our clients recently bought a house. Nice. She posted on social media. We would not have known about that because that's a personal finance thing. We don't cover their personal finances. And so we made sure to bring that up on the monthly meeting. We're like, we noticed you bought a house or whatever, and congratulations. It's a huge deal. So yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Serena, for sharing all the 4 things to really differentiate yourself so you can handle that objection with a lot of power and abundance on, how are you different than my current CPA, or how are you different than my this other CPA? I'm meeting with 3 others. How are you different? And being able to confidently share and have them experience also why you're different through your front end process. Is there anything else, Serena, that you'd love to share with the listeners today that maybe we didn't cover, that just popped in your head, or anything else as we wrap up?
I would say, like, trust yourself. I know there's a lot of confusion about what it means to be an advisor and how to even get started. You're likely already doing a lot of it. You just need to actually make it into a process or a method and do it consistently across all your clients. And I would also say, like, if you're in the position where you know your prices are too low and you're looking for a way to increase them, it's really hard to just increase your clients drastically without providing extra value. So add that monthly meeting in.
Yeah, and celebrate, and they'll gladly pay you more. Well, thank you, Serena, so much for being here with us today on the Abundant Accountant podcast. It's always an honor to have you here, and I'm sure you'll be back soon, and have a lovely rest of your day. What an amazing show with Serena today. She always has so much great stuff to talk about, but I'm all about not having you all lose out $22,000 just like she did with Joe Schmo, or that advisory opportunity that she had with a startup and said, oh, I'm going to charge a % of sales, and got coaxed into doing that. And I think for each of you to think about, how much time can you set aside to create your process, to create your framework? I'm not sure what book she was referring to, but I bet you could Google it, or I bet you actually have it in your head. It's just creating and setting out the time to create that experience. And let me tell you, I got, my dream car was like 2 years ago. Yeah, they just sent me an email that I'm on my 3rd year of my lease right now. And it's a Tesla. The client experience they created was flawless. You don't even have to go and haggle with anybody. You don't have to do anything. Even the paperwork when you pick up your car was 3 pieces of paper. I think you signed your lease agreement, which was 1 page. You sign that you're picking up your car and it's your own responsibility. And then the other beautiful thing in California, they actually have insurance too through Tesla. So I've never had a more smooth, clean process. But I promise you that I think Tesla really had to think that one through. When they're going to deliver a car to a client, or you're going to go pick it up at one of their locations, and then they do a walk around and they teach you how to use it for about 30 minutes because it's like basically a big iPhone. But how can you create your version of a Tesla experience in your firm so you can really get past that objection or client question that you probably hear all the time? How are you different than my current firm? What are you going to do differently that I'm already doing or, not getting? There's all different ways that you might hear that question. But I think it's, how can you set out 3 hours right now, this week, to create some sort of framework or process so that not only do you have a Tesla experience meeting with clients, but you also don't lose out on any more revenue or get coaxed into some sort of deal on a % of revenue with a startup like Serena did, and lost out on a year where she probably could have filled her firm up with 5 or 10 other clients. And think about the not only lost time she had, but those $22,000 of lost revenue she had, so that doesn't happen to you. And if you think that increasing your monthly revenue by 3 times is really difficult, or you think that increasing your fees will lose you clients and result in lower revenue, I get it. Everybody thinks that. If everybody thinks that if we discount our fees to our current clients, they're going to, they won't, if we discount, they'll come to me. But if I increase them, they're going to leave me. And it's simply just not true. So if you want to see how the clients that I am working with are doing it, then register for my brand new masterclass at theabundantaccountant.com/masterclass. It's an investment of 48.5 minutes that will provide you a lot more increased revenue without working more, without having to get another few letters after your name, and without having to justify why you're charging or discounting your fees or getting coaxed into something just like Serena did. So once again, head on over to theabundantaccountant.com/masterclass. I look forward to seeing some of you there. If you don't show up there, then I'll see you on the next episode. Have a beautiful day.